What's up, everybody? Welcome to a brand new season of Grand Chancellor. I'm Albert Bushels, producing today's show. With me is
Mike D'Elia,
the host with the Grand Chancellor.
So I wanted to start off this episode with a few clarifications on the last season. Well, three in particular. The first on the season finale. I didn't exactly word the first 5 minutes that well. Like, I didn't clarify that exactly. The Bible states that there's a time for peace and a time for war, and war is a necessary last resort when compromise can't be reached. And on the episode of radicalism, that episode wasn't a complete rejection of the mindset. There's actually a virtue called zeal, which is an uncompromising belief in, say, Christianity, that your belief is stronger than the adversity that the rest of the world gives you. I'd say make no mistake about it, we as human beings are, in fact, at war within our own selves to achieve salvation, and we have the capability to make the ultimate decision to choose the path of salvation, which is by virtue, or eternal damnation, which is the path of vice. But the question is, why choose virtue, especially since the greater amount of people choose the path of vice? Well, I'd answer that with a Stoic concept. Stoicism is the inherent belief that you should focus on what you have control over, as opposed to worrying about everything. You don't have control over the deaths of others or your own death. You don't have 100% control over your health, though you can do things to benefit it. You don't have 100% control over your finances. That being said, a burglar can walk in any second, steal half your stuff. The central topic to that is you cannot take any material possessions with you after you're dead. Therefore, what is the point of them, other than some sense of vanity? But a lot of the time, we tend to buy stuff that we don't need to impress people that we don't like and say, hey, I'm better than you. When in reality, as I stated last season, you're not all that. The concept which I wanted to address was called memento mori, which is a Latin phrase translates to remember death. If you remember that any or every day could be your last, how would you live your life? Or you could take it a step further. Would you be satisfied with everything going on in your life were you to die today? Death is inevitable, and worldly, non-lasting pleasures you can't take those with you, even if it's immediate gratification of the body, which is a few steps shy of paganism. You can't take money with you. You can't take those momentary pleasures with you. They're at most temporary, and they reap no reward whatsoever other than a dopamine release. And it affects nobody but yourself. No legacy, no nothing. I'm going to go back to the quote that I used in the episode on radicalism. Cattle die and kinsmen die, and so must one die oneself. But the one thing I know which never dies is the fame of a dead man's deeds. Now, that's not to say fame in of itself is the thing to aspire to, although that is something that lasts after death, the mark you leave on the world, leaving it a better place, as it were, as opposed to just achieving fame. Anybody can get famous for any period of time, whether you're in the movies or you commit some heinous crime or you build a better mousetrap. It's inconsequential, depending on whether or not you make a mark on the world.
I do have a question. But don't we buy things for our own good just to feel better, though? Is that allowed?
Well, that depends on your... that is pretty much based on emotion. Like buying things for the sake of making yourself feel better. Well, why do you need to feel better, and why do you need those materials to make yourself feel better?
What if I need a new pair of headphones that my old ones broke?
Well, depending on your perspective on life, that could be a necessity.
Okay.
I mean, with that, you get into the concept of noise versus silence. I was reading a book. I was listening to an audiobook from Cardinal Robert Sarah, who, well, you may or may not know who he is, but he's a cardinal with the Catholic Church. He wrote a book, obviously, and he states that we live in a dictatorship of noise, that we are so bombarded by sounds and constant waving stretches of color and constantly bombarded with these outright images, which a significant portion of the time they could be expressed as vulgarity. Take, for instance, your standard Burger King commercial, the model with eating a cheeseburger on a yacht with fireworks in the background. All it is razzle-dazzle, and that's about it. The healthier way to look at things is seeking out a period of silence as opposed to maintaining that constant background noise.
Yeah.
Because from Cardinal Robert Sarah's perspective, God works in silence, and he speaks in silence. You reach a greater sort of transcendence through silence. Silence of the heart, silence of the eyes, silence of the hearing.
Couldn't one argue that God also comes when there's also quote-unquote noises in the world? Like, like the burning bush that Moses found, that because there was like hardships facing Egypt, or I was never very like pay attention much in Sunday school. When God came down to Moses again for the Ten Commandments, or when God whispered to Muhammad's ear and everything. Couldn't you say because of those noises, quote unquote, God also came? So it's not also just silence, but as well, it is a balance between noise and silence.
Well, in the case of Moses and even since, Jesus, God was speaking,
yeah,
but he was making it outright heard. He was making himself known.
Yeah, but
he was
still
developing.
Talking.
Yeah. At the same time, just generally speaking, or speaking truth is not necessarily noise. It could be just communication.
Yeah.
Like you and I are speaking right now. That isn't noise.
But technically, isn't everything we do is noise? Every sound wave is a noise of some sort. It's just how we define a noise.
Well, I'd say that
because music is a noise.
Yeah.
It's just we call these nice sound waves music, though, because we enjoy them.
Well, it depends on your outlook on that. Sound does not necessitate noise. But I did want to get back to this. The concept of memento mori, you could, at the same time, it's been bastardized, getting back to what we were saying before, the concept of YOLO. You only live once, therefore you should live in the rut of going to parties, getting drunk, spending Saturday morning with a hangover, and it's a consistent yielding, or to take it a step further, a slavery in a sense to the passions. When we can control ourselves in those moments, we can choose to deny ourselves that immediate gratification in favor of something greater than ourselves, pursuing virtue, for example. And essentially, you could, Marcus Aurelius put it best. If you don't know who Marcus Aurelius is, he was a Stoic philosopher, a Roman emperor. He was Richard Harris's character in the movie Gladiator. He said, "Be like a boxer, not a gladiator, when applying the principles of your philosophy. The gladiator lays aside the sword he uses and picks it up again, but the boxer need only clench his fist." That is to say, in other words, if you're pursuing something, whether it's entrepreneurial, working out, the rabble is always going to heckle you, meddle with you. They're going to assert their narcissism and vanity. They're going to lie to you, frankly, be somewhat envious of you. But humanity is made as a social being. We're meant to work together and turn away from those things people are preoccupied with. Turning away from those who want to bring you down simply because they're preoccupied with their vices and revelry in their immediate pleasures is to go against nature. We'd be going against our own nature by denying ourselves the ability to be social. And to top that off, well, in times of peace, prepare for war. Just because a person is saying, "Oh, don't do this. Don't pursue any sort of entrepreneurial venture. Come, just go to a club with the rest of us. Get drunk and, frankly, make all the wrong decisions at every single week of your life." When you could be doing that entrepreneurial action, you could be working out, you could be pursuing virtue. That's about all I could say without talking in a circle. So, back to you, Albert. If you have any questions, any further things to touch on?
It's a pretty interesting one today. Well, guys, that was another great talk with the Grand Chancellor himself.
Michael D'Elia.
Thank you guys for tuning in for another season of the Grand Chancellor. Tune in next week for another episode. Signing off, Albert Bushels.